KYUSS.
I think punk rock is exactly what describes our music, though. I mean, I think we're a bunch of punks playing rock music. I mean, we're not hardcore by any sense, and we're not punker music, but I think we're four punks playing rock, basically. That's what it is.
KYUSS. They're a rock band. A lot of people know this rock band. Kinda. Now you may be thinking, hey, isn't that the kid from the Nirvana vs. Alice in Chains video? Yes, it is. I'm not going to be drinking too much soy sauce this time around, so I'm not as dumb as I normally will be. But I'm going to talk about KYUSS for this episode, and because Brody told me to be on camera for this one, I'm going to be arguably a bit less intelligent than I am normally. But still, KYUSS. What to say about KYUSS? So I've decided against killing 4 birds with one stone because that would take way too long for a single video to cover. Consider this retrospective part 1, and the one I'm going to do after this one part 2. KYUSS is one of those bands that fall into the category of mainstream yet still underground, as I described in my Flaming Lips episode. They're mainstream in the sense that everybody and their cerebral palsied mother is asking for a reunion at this point, but they're also underground in that, well, if you didn't know who KYUSS were before this video, consider that your reason for why this band is underground. As much as I can jive to the music of KYUSS and list like 1 or 2 songs that actually sound good, you're gonna have a hard time actually finding anything in depth with this retrospective, just putting that out there right now. But let not that statement mess up your What? I do have my own opinions on these albums in this retrospective, hence why this video is like 20 minutes long instead of being 10 minutes long. It's not going to be like the Alice Cooper retrospective where the albums are kind of briefly touched on, and it's not going to be like the Flaming Lips retrospective where the albums are gone on in way too much detail than needed. And it's certainly not going to be like the Motorhead video where everybody knows the details behind it and nobody really cares regardless besides the opinion of a guy on a toilet. So KYUSS was formed after a few renamings and a member switch out. Initially they were named Katzenjammer, or Katzenjammer, or whatever you want to call it. Then they renamed themselves Sons of KYUSS and released a self-titled debut EP. And then they renamed themselves to simply KYUSS after replacing their original bassist. Their live performances at the time of their forming mostly took place in the relatively empty areas of Southern California. They didn't have many concert venues and stuff to go to promote their music. As Josh Homme said, you have to be good out there when you're playing, or else you're not good. I think I took that quote out of context. And reportedly, some of those concerts had to be powered using gasoline generators given the lack of electrical wires present to power their instrumental and stage equipment. So these shows, cobbled together as they seem to be, at least from my description, they helped the band sculpt their sound to be this rough, sun-baked rock music. In fact, their music is like sand. It's coarse, rough, and irritating, and it gets everywhere. Anyways, the band's first official lineup as KYUSS consisted of John Garcia as the vocalist, Nick Oliveri as the bassist, Brant Bjork as the drummer, and Josh Homme as the lead guitarist. I so want to say Josh's last name is Homme, but I've heard so many people, I think including himself, say Homme. I need to get used to that. Anyways, the band signed up with Dolly Records, at the time an independent label, and through that label they released their debut album titled Wretch. Yeah, a bundle of fun right from the intro, as you can hear. Well, that song is the intro, titled, aptly enough might I add, Beginning of What's About to Happen, Highway 74. The whole song is filled with adrenaline, beginning to end. Fuck death metal, this is what you should be moshing to. The riffs on this album and the drumming that complements it are equally kick-ass, and usually whenever I hear good songs like these, instrumentally speaking, I'm let down by more often than not the vocals, But even the vocals are awesome on this debut. They don't sound too harsh, but they definitely have a rough edge to them that adds energetic youthfulness, yet grittiness in the music overall. The first 3 songs are almost non-stop gnash your teeth and punch bathroom stall doors fun, with the 3rd song literally called Son of a Bitch, opening with a heavy riff and progressing to a hook that reminds me a lot of Alice in Chains, both in tone and how John delivers his lines. It is the slowest of the 3 in terms of pacing, but man does it keep up the energy. Black Widow kinda just marches on by, no real pull factor to the song. Filler, but you know, the good kind of filler. This and the song Deadly Kiss were from their Sons of KYUSS EP, and Deadly Kiss isn't that spectacular either, just saying. Katzen, Jammer, Yammer, whatever, is more the same deal except hyperactive like the last 2. A little odd that Black Widow came before it in the track listing because it somewhat messes with the energy flow of the album, but to each their own. I hear some Black Sabbath or otherwise doomy vibes overall in this album whenever it's slowed down and not being abrasive Motorstorm rock.
I don't see any Sabbath influence in what we do. It just so happens that back in '68 when Sabbath was forming and what they saw as a band, as a rock band, is very similar to what we see here in '92 as a rock band, and it's just I think it's more of a coincidental thing than more of an influential thing.
And that wraps up the good of this album. What wasn't so good? For one, the production, despite giving the riffs and drums enough of a punch to get blood flowing into any place you think it would, the production in general is bad. It really is. The bass has absolutely no bass to it. It's drowned out by the lead guitar entirely. And while yes, it is kind of befitting of this music style to sound unpolished, raw, and rough, like sand, which is coarse, rough, and irritating, it didn't need to be irritating. And no more is that evident than by the last song, Stage 3, which would have been a great closer had there not been a phaser effect. Well, either that, or had it not sounded like the effect was tacked on at the last minute. But those are small gripes compared to the praise that I give this album overall. It's an excellent start to the band's discography, and I give it a very high thumbs up. Almost immediately after their debut release, the band got back into the studio to record their second album on Dolly Records, releasing it the next year in 1992, titling it Blues for the Red Sun. Boasting better production this time around, but still retaining the gritty and brutal guitar tone, it's safe to say that even if you're 1 second into this album and have never heard anything else from this band before this point, expect greatness. There's something about this album that I didn't note compared to the last one, either that or it just didn't occur to me until this one rolled around. John Garcia not only sounds like a deeper pitched echo of Lane Staley, if that makes any sense, but he also sounds like a younger James Hetfield. And those two in combination work wonders. His voice coupled with Josh's distorted playing and Nick's more noticeable bass this time around cements a hard atmosphere for this album. Everything production-wise has improved, as I kind of said before. Not only is Nick Oliveri's bass actually audible, and the lead's distortion has been made somehow even better too, but the drums are also improved. I refrained from saying that they needed a bit more punch on Wretch, because I gave the drumming praise for fitting the style, but it's much appreciated to hear on Red Sun. According to Wikipedia, which cites its source from AllMusic, so I'm really playing with fire here, apparently Josh Homme achieved better distortion by downtuning his guitar and then plugging it into bass amplifiers. Whether or not that's true is again up for debate, but it really works into the band's favor on this album, like on Molten Universe and 50 Million Year Trip. From starting this album, even though everything sounds great and is by all means an improvement over the original, there's something missing on this one. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's that I've personally found fewer songs that stood out, but in a way that makes sense. On Blues for the Red Sun, it has more in general good songs that you can't really pick out or name, whereas on Wretch, it had good songs and alright songs, but the good ones were really ones that you could note and actually have the name of when you're recommending this album to somebody. Are there riffs galore that succeed in continuing this band's quality? Hell yes, almost any song you choose has at least one portion that'll make you go, "Oh my goodness, oh my damn." So in the end, I simply recommend you listen to the entire thing, as much of a cop-out as that sounds. I do think that this album is a great follow-up to Wretch, and as I said multiple times before, it's an improvement over the prior in many aspects. There's just not many specific moments I can show off without neglecting others that are worthy of the same attention. Maybe there's a few. Writhe has an audible MIDI piano which is quite funny. Mondo Generator has some distorted, wild screaming portions. And the last song is titled Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
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 So basically my stance is, good album, my review can't do it justice. I'll say that right now. It does not do this album justice. Check it out for yourself. Blues for the Red Sun would later go on to be one of the most influential albums in the stoner rock genre according to some people, and at the point of its release, the greatest achievement KYUSS made. Nick Oliveri departed from the band, and KYUSS recruited a new bassist named Scott Reeder a while after Red Sun had been recorded. To promote that album, the band went on tour, actually getting some shows where they opened for Metallica, which proved no doubt to be a great help to the popularity of the band. Dolly Records was soon bought by Elektra Records, a bigger label, who chose to keep KYUSS on their roster. So things were definitely looking upwards for the band now. 2 praised albums and an upgraded record deal and a tour with Metallica? That's every rocker's dream right there. So the band got to work recording and presenting their 3rd album and their first major label release, Welcome to Sky Valley, released in mid-1994. Originally recorded in 1993, the band intended for this album to be released in early 1994, back when Dolly and their parent label Chameleon were still afloat. But after business declined on the label's part and Elektra took the reins, the band found this album's release delayed by 2 months. Then it was delayed by another 3 months until it reached near the ass end of June. This album was finished a whole year before it actually released. But does it sound like it? Did the excitement around this band just die off in the waiting period between the last album and this album, to where the sound present on this one just wouldn't be appealing to people anymore? And before you call it a ridiculous question due to the fact that it was only delayed by maybe 1 year, if not then less than, but this was the 90s, a freaking transitional period in music to where not only mainstream music was evolving and people's tastes were evolving, but even metal and rock were just fusing into these new things. You had hair bands going out of style, and that was like a continuation of the 80s, but whatever. You had hair bands going out of style, and then you had new bands, some like Korn, and some like Sepultura, and other bands that Brody could probably list off that I can't name because I'm a poser, but anyways. Those new bands were creating their own new style, influenced by some other bands of that style, and influencing other bands from their style. Short to say, the 90s was a transitional period for music, and people's tastes were changing all the time. Now that being said, with the 1 year delay of the new KYUSS album, did it actually sound like this album was delayed? Did it actually sound like this was a dated formula? Clearly not. This is another highly praised album, one mentioned a lot when talking about KYUSS and by extension Queens of the Stone Age. The general process of things on this album is the same as the last one, with hard-hitting riffs and the vocals perfectly suited, but it's generally more polished as well. The drums have been mixed even better than before, and it might be a bit humorous to say, but this is their best produced album so far. There's quite a few ambient, reverb-heavy moments that bring the stoner side of stoner rock to this album, one right off the bat on Asteroid. It's cool, this band just keeps adding things on and polishing them without taking away or changing too much in the process. They're the original good guy game developers. The songwriting also takes more of an instrumental turn than prior albums, which is good or not so good depending on how you view John Garcia as a vocalist. Me personally, not hearing him isn't that big of a loss, but there's nothing negative when he's present. Also, this album is comprised of a lot of memorable songs, from the opening track Gardenia, to Asteroid's psychedelic evil sound to Demon Cleaner. There's just one great moment after great moment on this album, and it's hard to pick a favorite song. Maybe Asteroid, but then again I go back to Gardenia more for the riff, so I'm still thinking on that. Now, I wish I had more to say, but it kind of goes without saying that this is actually KYUSS's best album. I could list a lot of things about every song here, but that would mostly be repeating everything that I said about the prior song. Again, very good work from the band on this one. I hold it in equal regard to Blues for the Red Sun, but those two albums are different in some ways, so it's like comparing an orange to a tangerine. After recording sessions completed for Sky Valley in 1993, Brant Bjork decided to leave the band, saying that conflict between him and Josh Homme led to him leaving. According to Brant and John Garcia in a Rolling Stone interview, Josh wanted to achieve more control over the band through publishing and writing credits. Sound familiar? Denying Brant's drumming parts in favor of others, and eventually trademarking the KYUSS brand shortly after Bjork's departure. Given how this band has a short lifetime, this probably didn't sit well with everyone else involved, and Bjork claimed that Queens of the Stone Age was Josh Homme's chance at having full control of a band by himself, like he wanted to with KYUSS. Now, whether or not we believe his side of the story or choose to see Josh Homme as this beyond cool motherfucker who you'd let take you to Disneyland is up to the person who does research on both sides, but regardless of what happened, the band needed a new drummer, and hired Alfredo Hernandez from the band Yawning Man, whose music influenced KYUSS in their earliest days. Then, the band recorded and released their fourth album in 1995 titled And the Circus Leaves Town. Fitting name for this album, as this would be the last one that KYUSS would make before they broke up just the year after. This album was also received lukewarmly at best by fans, since this wasn't really the energetic high adrenaline rush that prior releases had been. By all means, this was still KYUSS, but a chill version. So yes, this is a calmer album, and for a band based on songs like Highway 74, they're probably alienating a good portion of their fan base who came from Metallica. Rest assured though, I think it's a good album, and my opinion in this retrospective matters. Nice try, Eddie. I saw you invalidating my music taste over there. It's not as good as the others, but it's still good. Songs like Gloria Lewis and Phototropic or Phototropic, whatever you want to call it, bring a slower yet still aggressive sound, similar to Asteroid or Son of a Bitch. Basically, this album is simply continuing with what KYUSS did on Sky Valley, except without as much of the testosterone. That doesn't mean I think the band, for lack of a better word, castrated their sound. It's just that after hearing 3 albums of roughly the same thing, to devolve now isn't so much a refreshing change, it's just underwhelming. There's good songs again. El Rodeo, Jumbo Blimp Jumbo, Tangy Zizzle are 3 good songs in a row that are heavy AF. There's a short ending song to this album called Day One, which is seen by some fans to be a tribute to Nirvana after Kurt Cobain's suicide, but what I see it as is KYUSS's swan song not just to Nirvana, but to the rest of the fans of KYUSS. This is the farewell song to beat all other farewell songs to a pulp. It fits so perfectly. Screw the Nirvana tribute. Okay, don't screw the Nirvana tribute, I'm just joking, that would be heartfelt if it was, but seriously, this is probably what the track was meant for, and holy crap, it accomplished that.
Don't be sad for
Both a lack of promotion and the lukewarm reception of this album probably were contributing factors when the band decided to break up in 1996. Not to mention the band's own troubles with some of its members. People since then have been asking and asking and asking and asking and asking for a KYUSS reunion, since even after the band's breakup they were growing in popularity thanks to other bands who cited them as an influence. Josh Homme, however, has said that he will not reunite KYUSS anytime soon, since he feels that to do so would be tarnishing the legacy of the band. To this day, KYUSS hasn't reformed. Well, I take that back, it did in a way. It reformed in all of its fans. Nah, I'm just joking. It was John Garcia and Nick Oliveri. They had been playing some KYUSS songs at their live shows in the past, but they finally got together and got a few other members to tour under the name KYUSS Lives, playing shows and eventually getting plans made to record an album in 2012 under the name. Basically, this was them jumpstarting the band again for everybody else who didn't get a chance to see KYUSS or hear KYUSS back when they were active. Sounds a bit cool, but Josh Homme put a stop to that, however, owning the KYUSS trademark, as I have said before. Brant Bjork may have been the original founder of the band according to some accounts, but Josh owned the trademark of KYUSS, and after a lawsuit was brought up, the group eventually chose to rename themselves after being forbidden from releasing any recordings under the name. KYUSS Lives does continue on under the name Vistacino, so if you want to hear some more stuff from KYUSS's original members, go right ahead. But meanwhile, Josh Homme was working on something groundbreaking. Something that would be probably more popular than KYUSS. No, not even probably more popular than KYUSS. It was more popular than KYUSS. It is more popular than KYUSS. I can hardly contain my excitement. But this band would go on to be one of the top bands of modern rock in this modern day, still continuing in this modern age. Or should I say, Stone Age.